Hello friends, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a card for this week's Color Throwdown Challenge. And I pulled out some Distress Oxide inks and I die cut pieces of Distress watercolor paper. Thought I would do some really easy watercoloring, splattering, fun things. So I will have links, of course, to all the wafer die sets I use, all the supplies, etc. My main little things are the Whirl Leaves wafer die from Simon Says Stamp. I die cut that a couple times. I die cut it from scraps as well. That's why a couple of them are like missing leaves. I just trimmed off the little, wonky pieces. And I stuck them to, I've shown and talked about this in one or two other videos. This is one of my, Brutus Monroe stick and stamp mats. This one is warped because I was testing how well, aka I wasn't paying attention when I was using it to hold die cuts and use my heat tool to dry them, and my brain just wasn't catching up with the rest of me, and like, this mat is not heat resistant, so I'd stop. I can't use it to stamp with, like to hold cardstock to stamp, because it's literally like warped, like it's ruined, but it's still got some stick to it, so I use it to just hold my die cuts in place. I've shown this in other videos how I'll either use this or I will use painter's tape stuck sticky side up onto my work surface, anything like that. Another option is you could do your watercoloring and then die cut after. That is always a thing too. I personally like die cutting before I watercolor, because then I can see exactly where, what I'm putting down, even though, again, I am just adding color. I'm not, doing anything intricate or adding, specific shading, anything like that. But it's nice to see where I'm putting the color. And with dyes like this that also add like a ton of piercing detail, I like to die cut it first, because then the color, regardless of what you're using, whether it's oxides or watercolors or markers or whatever, can like kind of sink in to those little areas too, and that can kind of create a fun look. So I used Twisted Citron and Mowed Lawn Oxide inks, and I was just smushing them onto my little palette, painted them, added some splatter after they were dry, because splatter is life. It gives texture. I love it. I set those aside, and then my next little pieces here are from the Bitty BIRDHOUSE wafer die set, one of my favorites. It's just so cute. So I die cut again this from Distress watercolor paper, and then to paint this I'm using Squeezed Lemonade and Mustard Seed Oxide inks, a little bit of Lost Shadow, and then I'm actually going to come in with just a tiny bit of Hickory Smoke just for the little circle piece that's technically the inside of the birdhouse. So that'll just darken it up a bit. So adding color to those. These pieces I didn't add any splatter to. I just decided to leave them as is. So I just set them aside. And then my background, I had die cut the Distress watercolor paper with one of the Nested Domed Arches wafer dies. And this one I'm painting with Salvaged Patina Distress Oxide ink and water. Just kind of doing a swirly motion, give it a bit of texture, a bit of, movement. And then removing it from the sticky mat. And I'm just drying it with my heat tool just to speed up the drying process, because I want to kind of layer the color on here just to give it a little more texture, a little more depth, all that fun stuff. So lift it up off the sticky mat, dry it, add another layer with the inks and water. I'm going to dry it again, and then of course I'm going to add some splatter to this as well, because. So once this is dry, I'll stick this in the splat box as well, and I just use my little fan brush. I've talked about this too. The fan brush, it's life-changing. If you've struggled with splatter, because there have been times where I did back in the day, I got used to the different things, but this fan brush, it's a game changer. It just works the best. I don't like anything else. I have so many fan brushes now, it's kind of ridiculous, but worth it. And these ones are cheap. These are, the ones I always use are the Royal and Langnickel Zen ones, and they're like a few dollars, like dirt cheap. Highly recommend. So anyway, I set everything aside, and then I die cut the thanks word from the Happy Thanksgiving wafer die set. I've used this in many videos, and I pretty much, I think I've only used the thanks from this set. It's just my favorite. I love the font. It's just cute. So I stacked it together with craft tacky glue. I've also shown this in many videos. This is a little Gina K detail bottle, and I use Simon's craft tacky glue in that bottle, and it's been a month or two now. I forget when I started doing this, and so far so good. I love it. If you do not like thicker glues, like craft tacky glue is probably the thickest consistency glue I've ever used. I personally, it's my go-to. I love it. I love it. But for some, they find it's too thick and they struggle with it. Whatever glue you've got, there's so many good ones on the market now. There's the Gina K Connect. There's Lawn Fawn glue. Honeybee has a glue. Studio Caudia has a glue. Like they're all great. I've used them all. They're all great. I like my craft tacky glue. I like that consistency. But any of those glues will work in those little Gina K bottles. I'll have links as always down below. So just explaining all my reasons. So I assembled my little birdhouse. That was quick and easy. And then my card base is going to be a top folding A2 white note card. And I'm going to stick that in my MISTI because I want to stamp a sentiment from the So Talkative stamp set. This came out last year, I think. It's been out for a while. I've used it in tons of videos because there's so many good sentiments in there. And most of them, it's for the insides of my cards. So I lined up the sentiment I wanted to use, and I'm going to stamp that with the salvaged patina oxide ink. Ink it up, stamp it a couple times. And then I'm going to adhere one of these Whirl leaves clusters to the inside. Because in the end, I actually ended up deciding only to use one on the front of my card. So again, I'm going to add adhesive to this. Just keeping it right along the little stem. Add some little scribblies here and there. And then once I've got this positioned onto the inside of the card, I'm just going to put some acrylic blocks on top of it just to hold everything down for a couple minutes. Let that glue dry. Get everything kind of into place, and those acrylic blocks to just hold it down, since these die cuts are curled up a little bit from all the watercoloring. But personally, that's also why I like die cutting first and then watercoloring with certain die cuts, especially these ones, because it gives extra little bits of texture. So on the card front, that's great. On the inside, it just means, stick something heavy on top of it, let it dry. It's good to go. Trimmed off the little bits hanging over. And then I'm going to reinforce the fold of the card with my Teflon bone folder. And then I will adhere that nested dome arch die cut. I'll adhere that into place with the craft tacky glue. And then, like I pretty much always do, I just stick it under my MISTI. Same thing. Let it sit there for a couple minutes. Let the glue dry so everything is just held down flat. And then I can go on and adhere all the other little elements, which I decided to adhere the little birdhouse and the leaf die cut with some thin foam squares. So it just gives it that little bit of dimension, gives everything a little bit more interest. So I popped those onto the back of these die cuts. I didn't worry about the little, like the string, that the little birdhouse is attached to. Just leave it. It's fine. It's going to go underneath that one leaf, and the foam square from that will just, press it down, and it's good to go. So pop the little birdhouse into place, and then I'll pop my little leaf cluster into place as well. Once I figure out, exactly how I want to position it, try not to press anything down, move it around a little bit. Then we get it pressed into place. Same thing, trim off that little tiny bit that was hanging over the edge of the card. And then the sentiment, I'm just going to adhere with the craft tacky glue. So get that adhered into place as well. And then of course I'm going to add bling. And I started out conservatively and then I was like, you know what? The bling is a feature. It is a feature of the card. So I'm using some Studio Caudia satin pale lemon pearls because they're just perfect, They're basically like squeezed lemonade, distress color in pearl form. Just chef's kiss, man. So, yeah, I was only going to add 5 in a triangle formation, And then I was like, wait, no, more is more. They're flowers now. So sprinkle these all around that die cut. And then I'm going to adhere those into place with craft tacky glue. Just using my little embellishment wand to pick them up, put down a dab of glue, press the pearl into it. Good to go. Got all those adhered, added a few more. Again, more is more, man. So once I got those adhered, I'm going to pair this card with a Audrey blue envelope from Simon. It'll just be perfect. And that will finish it off. So like always, I will have a link below the video to my blog post. In the blog post, I'll link to the color throwdown challenge. It's just for fun. Anyone can play along. You know, it just kind of gets you thinking outside the box and trying out different things and color combos you might not think of. So I'll have a link to that in my blog post. And then, of course, I'll link to all the supplies I used. All that info will be in the description box below the video if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you. And I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!